Okay, so official good evening to everyone. This is the final session of our 2025 monthly webinar series. My name is Dana Ripper. I'm with the Missouri River Bird Observatory, and with us tonight as well is my co-director and co-founder of MRBO, Ethan Duke. We're super happy to have so many folks joining us this evening. Before we begin our webinar, I wanted to share or remind folks of some exciting upcoming events that we have. We've finalized all of the excellent speakers for our two winter webinar series that are coming up January to March of 2026. One of these is this one here. It's a very deep dive learning series on plastic, which we're hosting in partnership with Missouri Stream Teams United. That's part of our statewide Show Me Less Plastic project that the two of our organizations do together. This webinar series is for everyone who's concerned about the plastic crisis, whether you're totally new to the topic or already working on it. Also, if you're a plastic person in Jefferson City, we have two in-person events coming up. One is a community workshop. It's a few hours. You will learn everything there really is to know about plastic and its risks and what we can all do about it from the local to the state level. And the other one is a film screening at the Capital City Cinema. We'll be having a happy hour about 5 to 6, and then we're going to screen the movie Plastic People, excellent documentary, and then we're going to have a brief panel discussion with advocates from Stream Teams United and Missouri River Relief. So I know y'all we're pretty plastic oriented around here, but it is a conservation issue that really needs our collective attention. So that's why we're doing all these different events. And then we have our winter naturalist series. So we've taken our winter webinars and kind of gone down a bit of a natural history route. So folks are welcome to join us for those. Those are going to be every other Monday night, January through March. And I'm going to put all the links in the chat when I'm done screen sharing, so you don't have to worry about doing the QR code if you haven't already. Pardon me. And then finally, I would be remiss in my role as a MRBO director and administrator if I didn't mention that we currently have a fundraiser going on Como Gives. This is a community-wide effort across mid-Missouri to raise funds for more than 150 different nonprofits. So I encourage you to check out MRBO's page and also the pages of our excellent partners, such as the Conservation Federation of Missouri, of which Bill is a part, and Missouri River Relief, Missouri Rural Crisis Center, and others. So, going to stop screen sharing. And on to our webinar of the evening. We're super happy to welcome Bill White, who we've known for many years in his capacity as a private lands biologist. He also gave Ethan and me a really excellent tutorial on the Missouri Bumblebee Atlas last summer. Bill is the coordinator of the Missouri Native Grasslands Collaborative, which is housed at the Conservation Federation of Missouri. The Native Grasslands Collaborative is a network of diverse organizations, agencies, and individuals dedicated to supporting native grasslands by preserving remnant prairies and expanding planted native grasslands for working lands and wildlife, while also sustaining rural economies and healthy communities. Bill works to implement strategies for improving grassland conservation across the state and to promote the importance of native grasslands to all Missourians. Bill also enjoys working on his farm, gardening, hunting bobwhite quail, and spending time outdoors with his 10 grandchildren. So, Bill, the stage is all yours.
Well, thank you for having me. Excited to be here and share some of the good things going on in Missouri related to the Farm Bill. And the background on this title slide is an example of a Farm Bill program pollinator plot. That's on my own farm. And I tell you what, it's almost an acre in size, about 100 foot wide, maybe less. And I typically have a covey of quail, and they nest in there, raise brood. I'll have a covey of quail into the fall. I've got a turkey brood that uses this, all sorts of bumblebees. I think I've had 6 species of bumblebees on this plot, deer fawns. So it's a wildlife mecca. out in the middle of farm country. So I'm going to talk about some of the basics, especially of the wildlife programs within the Farm Bill. It has many tentacles and reaches into a lot of different areas in the conservation world. And probably the biggest thing I want you to come away with tonight is the significance of this conservation title that's part of the Farm Bill. It's had a huge impact on the natural resources of our state over the last 40 years. And the amount of dollars that have come into Missouri over the course of those 40 years amounts to billions. And I couldn't begin to tell you how many billions, but that's all going into our economy in Missouri. People are buying seed from seed dealers, or buying drills, or buying pipe for different practices, or buying fence, hiring contractors to do the work. It contributes a lot to our economy over time. And I need to give you a history of the Farm Bill, because it's had a lot of, over the last 40 years, it's had a lot of ups and downs, and mostly moving forward. But prior to 1985, the Farm Bill there was no conservation title. And it was mostly geared towards managing the grain supply, managing surpluses. Some of you may be old enough or have heard about the soil bank and cap acres. While those were good for wildlife at the time, they were mainly put in place to manage surplus grain supplies and take cropland out of production. So in 1985, that was the very first Farm Bill where we had a specific conservation title, and we started doing things in the name of conservation, not just commodity surplus regulation. At that time, the Conservation Reserve Program was added. And we go to the next Farm Bill in 1990. And Farm Bills come out once every 4 to 5 years, depending on the political winds of the time. In 1990, they added the Wetland Reserve Program, which has added getting close to a couple 100,000 acres of wetlands within the state of Missouri. The next Farm Bill in 96 added the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, or EQIP. And you're going to hear me throw out those acronyms quite a bit. I've been in it for 40 years myself with the Farm Bill, so it's just old habit. Another program that was added at that time was the Wildlife Habitat Incentive Program, or WIP. And then wildlife was added as a co-equal consideration in CRP, that same Farm Bill. And that made a huge difference in the direction of CRP and a lot of the practices that were added, especially in the continuous CRP program, which has a lot of buffers and other type practices that are concentrated in smaller areas. In 2002 Farm Bill, the Conservation Security Program and the Grassland Reserve Program were added. The Grassland Reserve Program was an easement program modeled after the Wetland Reserve Program. And we added somewhere around 4,300 acres of native prairie in Missouri into that easement. And they're in permanent perpetual easements. And in 2018, we added the Regional Conservation Partnership Program. It's part of that EQIP program that I mentioned earlier. And that targets conservation within a few counties, typically, and then several partners band together and help provide a match in the amount of dollars coming from the Farm Bill to that area. And I can't leave the discussion of history of the Farm Bill without talking about the Missouri influence that has kind of steered the direction of the Farm Bill many times. We had several people, you may know of the names of Ray Evans and Bill McGuire. They were employees of the Missouri Department of Conservation, Farm Bill coordinators, and they had a lot of influence over about 3 decades of what was going into that Farm Bill conservation title and some of the rules that came out to help get those implemented within the state. So hats off to some Missouri people who had a great influence on the Farm Bill. So what does it all mean to Missouri? With 92% of our land in private ownership, that money that's coming from the conservation title of the Farm Bill really helps a lot of landowners and has a big impact on the landscape within Missouri. If you go out farther west where they have a lot more public land, that Farm Bill is not near as important as it is here in Missouri. It is the largest conservation funding source for private landowners we've ever had, and it has grown by leaps and bounds over the course of that 40 years of history. Right now, it's bringing in roughly $200 million per year to Missouri landowners, and that's going to vary from year to year, but it's been fairly stable the last few years. And then it had a big jump a year ago in 2024 with some funding through the Inflation Reduction Act that Congress passed, had some actual more money in it for conservation in the Farm Bill. And the Farm Bill has helped realize one of Aldo Leopold, author of the Sand County Almanac. One of the things that he pushed for was to reward the landowner to conserve the resources for the public interest. And as we get into the descriptions of some of these programs and what they do, you will see that they indeed are doing things in the public interest. Whether that's preserving soil for future generations or impacting the water quality or creating more wildlife, even more waterfowl that the public is going to be able to take advantage of. This is the national allocations for the 2025 Farm Bill. And let's see, I think there's $8 or $9 billion when you add that all up. Missouri's getting 200 million of it, so we're getting more than our fair share of it because we are such a intensive agriculture state. As part of that, the other part is because we have so much in private ownership in the state. And we'll get in more into these programs and what they do for the resources. So this was one of the bumblebees that are in steep decline in Missouri, the Southern Plains bumblebee, and this was taken in an equip pollinator planting in Missouri. And this is, I'm going to go through some practices that are possible through the Farm Bill that in the amounts that we wouldn't normally see without the Farm Bill. And so pollinator habitat is a huge practice in the Farm Bill. We'll get into more detail on that. But one of the things that we found is there's University of Missouri right now is studying some USDA pollinator plantings in Northeast Missouri. And they found that these two bumblebee species that are in major decline are actually being helped by these pollinator plantings. So if we can get enough of these on the landscape, we've got a chance to at least reverse the decline of these two species in the state, maybe even increase their numbers. So a huge impacts. We were hoping to see this kind of thing, and through this study, we're seeing that. Another big practice that's really gained momentum in the last few years is converting tall fescue, which is probably 90 some odd percent of the pasture that we have here in Missouri, to native forages. We can also convert cropland to native forages. But there's been millions and millions spent here the last few years in an effort to see more of this happen. And the drought we had the last several years this is making a huge difference. These native forages stay green and growing through the hot weather and the droughty periods, and can survive that. Increased cattle gains, increased calf gains, increased conception rates is a lot of the comments we hear from producers that are using this. And with all these plantings that have been going in the last few years where they've been converting tall fescue, we get an awful lot of landowners commenting they're seeing a lot more wildlife, especially bobwhite quail, coming back after they've converted one of their pastures to native grasses. This is probably the biggest practice in the Farm Bill currently. I think the last year there was almost 250,000 acres of cover crops put in through the Farm Bill programs. So making a huge impact out there on the landscape for water quality and soil health. Another practice that's used in Missouri, especially southern Missouri, is forest stand improvement. And you have the option in Farm Bill of managing for wildlife with that forest stand improvement or for timber production. So it's a popular practice, especially in southern Missouri. Another practice that brings a lot of benefits to Missouri is the different types of wetland restoration we can do. We can do crop field reflooding, and in some years they've got some extra money that comes into the state to do that. Happens especially down in the Boot Heel where we've got the rice fields. You can do cost share restorations through programs like EQIP, and then we have the Wetland Reserve Easement Program. And at one point, this is probably 10 years ago, if you've heard of Stuttgart, Arkansas, the waterfowl or duck hunting capital of the world, I guess it is, there was some podcast personalities down that way that was calling the Missouri Boot Heel the new Stuttgart because of all the wetland reserve easements that were coming in there, as well as the crop field reflooding. It was actually shifting the duck migration or maybe holding it back a little longer. We had reports from Missouri Department of Conservation wetland managers on the wetland areas down there that these efforts were increasing the amount of duck use on the conservation areas and resulting in better hunter harvests. There's a lot of opportunity for bobwhite quail habitat restoration through the Farm Bill. Any practice you can think of that benefits bobwhite quail, you can do it through the Farm Bill. And there was a couple of quail focus areas in northern Missouri that had installed a lot of CRP and other Farm Bill practices, and they had some of the highest quail densities in the state in over 40 years of studies looking at quail density. So fine opportunity if we can get enough habitat on the landscape to restore quail. There's also cost share for invasive species control, whether that be Sericea lespedeza like you see in the photo here, bush honeysuckle just growing in the timber, you name it, the Farm Bill can help with that kind of control. And that's just a smattering of some of the practices out there. I couldn't venture to say how many practices are available through EQIP and CSP and some of the other programs that are out there. So just give you an idea of what practices, or not practices, but programs and different initiatives that are available through the Farm Bill right now in Missouri. Of course, we've got the Conservation Reserve Program. We already talked about that, 4-year-old program. It's broken down into 3 major parts. The general CRP, which is signing up larger fields into grass practices. Tree plantings can also be done in Missouri. We have the continuous CRP that's focused a lot on buffers and trying to have a larger impact on the resources, whether it's water quality or soil. There's some wildlife practices in there. And then a very seldom used part of CRP, seldom used in Missouri at least, is the grassland CRP. And producers can sign up pasture and I think hayland into that program and get a rental payment on that. It's not used very much in Missouri. It is used a lot farther to the west where you have a lot more grassland. And then probably after CRP, our biggest program in Missouri is EQIP, or the Environmental Quality Incentives Program. You can see I've listed 4 different initiatives or programs available through there that are especially good for wildlife. And EQIP is a lot bigger than just wildlife. I don't know if they still have it available anymore, but you can do high tunnel facilities through that. Things to do with water quality related to livestock, and all sorts of different programs and initiatives. So those are some of the programs. We'll get into them in a little more detail as we go along. But these are the programs that are best for wildlife through EQIP. There's a conservation security or conservation stewardship program that rewards producers for doing extra things. And there's some pretty good payments in there. A lot of interest in utilizing some of the pollinator plantings through this program. We have ACEP, or the Ag Conservation Easement Program, and that is where our Wetland Reserve Easement program currently resides. And they can do easements on other things. Just takes a match from a third party to help make that a reality. So a little bit more detail. Again, Conservation and Reserve Program is the first one that was in the conservation title of the Farm Bill. It's 40 years old. It actually expired because the Farm Bill expired at the end of September. So we went a couple months without the Conservation Reserve Program. It was reauthorized in the government shutdown funding bill that passed in November. So we are good to go for another year. We're waiting on USDA to offer a sign up for the continuous sign up. And continuous sign up typically is a year-round sign up unless they're running short on acre limits. It provides an annual rental payment for 10 to 15 years. For the most part, it's converting row crop acres to conservation cover. There's some exceptions to that. And here's some figures on Missouri. We have roughly, and this changes month to month, but we've got roughly 650,000 to maybe up close to 700,000 acres in Missouri. About half of those are those high value practices, buffer practices, water quality practices, and wildlife practices. The other 50% is typically the larger fields that are entered through that annual general sign-up period. So approximately $100 million in annual rental payments and cost share coming into Missouri each year. And I put myself a note down here at the bottom so I wouldn't forget this. At one time, it was probably in the 2000s, maybe into the early teens, CRP was at least twice as big as it is now. And a lot of that has been converted back to row crops, some of it being converted back to pasture. But when it was at its peak, some of the highest densities of breeding Henslow sparrows were found in North Missouri, and they were concentrated on some of that CRP that was out there. So, and a lot of that was fescue and brome CRP. So even if it wasn't really good wildlife cover, it was still helping a species of wildlife that was in steep decline. So this gives you kind of an idea of the last few years what CRP has looked like. This is from 2024, and that's the latest data available from USDA, just because it takes a while to get everything put together at the end of their fiscal year, which ended in the end of September. So in 2024, roughly 670,000 acres. The other big program I was talking about was EQIP, Environmental Quality Incentives Program. This gives you an idea of how it has been funded over the years. Again, in 2024, what happened was Congress had passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which included additional money for Farm Bill programs. And so EQIP in Missouri got a big chunk of extra money. Started a little bit in 2023, I believe, and then in 2024 it really kicked in. We've got the same going on in 2025 and on into 2026. These are the big practices that are put in through EQIP in 2024, and all these numbers are record numbers for, especially like wildlife habitat planning. Before I retired and I worked for the Department of Conservation, it was hovering between 1 and 2 million, and now it's 3 million. So quite a big influx of money into the programs in the last couple of years. You can see cover crops there. They're almost 250,000 acres in 2024. Pasture hayland planting, a lot of that is going into native forages, and it might be a fescue conversion or a row crop conversion. These are some of the top wildlife practices and a little bit of detail on what those practices are. Of course, the wildlife habitat planning, again, one of the top practices in EQIP. A lot of that is going to monarch plantings. And so good for bobwhite quail, good for our pollinators. Wetland restoration is real big, as well as managing wetlands. So these are some of the, in the CSP, or the Conservation Stewardship Program. This is the big practice for wildlife. You can see there's several $100,000 put in for establishing monarch habitat again. It's a popular practice in there. And then a couple other different types of habitat being done on wetlands, as well as forest stand improvement that benefits bats. Through EQIP, we've also got a couple of initiatives. I think the wetland initiative, wetland restoration initiative, this is the last year for that. They may not have another sign up for that. For the Working Lands for Wildlife, there's a butterfly, monarch butterfly initiative through that. And it is concentrated along I-35. Then we've got the Northern Bobwhite pilot project, and you can see some of the areas shown on that map in the bottom right of that screen, trying to concentrate in some of the areas where partners are focused on bobwhite quail. So you can see millions and millions of dollars coming in for wildlife through these different efforts in EQIP. Another part of EQIP is that Native Forages Initiative, and somewhere around $9 million over the last 3 years was obligated for that program. It was, again, meant to convert either tall fescue pasture or row crop acres to native forages. And the practices that were available in that initiative was planting native forages, and that was about it. So it provided cost share to kill out the fescue and get the native forages drilled. There was opportunities to plant a diverse mix that included native forbs, and as well as straight native warm season grasses. So it was a pretty popular program, and it started there during that intense drought we were getting in Missouri in 2023 and 2024. So there was lots of interest at that time. So if you're interested in any of this through EQIP and CSP, because of the government shutdown, USDA has extended the sign up on those programs to January 15th. And I believe it also has extended the sign up for the Native Forages Initiative and both the Working Lands for Wildlife Monarch Initiative and the Bobwhite Project. You'll have to check with your local USDA office if you're interested in signing up for those. So another really cool program that just has come about the last, probably 5 years, I guess. 2018 Farm Bill is when it started. And again, it requires partners to match USDA funds, and that could be either through financial assistance or technical assistance to the landowners. But it's a good opportunity to concentrate some efforts. Missouri's taken advantage of it on several different projects through that program that benefit wildlife. We've got one, again, aimed at monarch butterflies and other native pollinators in Northwest Missouri. The 4 counties it's available in is listed there. So it focuses on taking lands that are enrolled in CRP and managing them more intensely to bring back some of the pollinator plants. Pheasants and Quail Forever help with that. They're the lead partners. We've got one that's in a few counties in East Missouri, North Central Missouri, and it's looking at using precision farming information and increasing the amount of field borders for wildlife, especially, that are planted. And the Department of Conservation is the lead partner on that. There's a program in East Missouri where we have a lot of sand prairie down in some of the counties in the Boot Heel, and they're offering voluntary easements for some of the remnant sand prairies down in there. And again, the Department of Conservation is a partner in that. Another one for wildlife is a forage practice in a few counties in Southwest Missouri and Northern Missouri. They're looking at trying to increase wildlife diversity through native forage establishment and the like. And the Nature Conservancy is the lead on that project. And there's 3 or 4 other projects and maybe more coming on board. But the other 3 that are on board right now are looking primarily at water quality practices and trying to improve water quality through various levels. And we've got different leads on that, like Missouri Department of Natural Resources, Watershed Committee of the Ozarks. So lots of cool things and additional money actually going to the landowners because of those partnerships and getting some additional conservation on the ground. We've talked about the wetland reserve easement. It is part of the Ag Conservation Easement Program, and there's several options in there. I think the most popular is still the permanent easement part of that. And then biologists and NRCS engineers go in there and engineer a wetland to try and mimic as much as possible some of the natural topography that may have been in the floodplain where this easement is occurring. And you can see in this photo here, they've dug some pools, some deeper pools, and some channels in there. So when the water does fall in the summer, there's still plenty of water available for some of the amphibians and other critters out there. And there's been lots of studies on wetland reserve. MRBO has done several years of work on bird survey use on wetland reserve properties throughout Missouri, and finding all sorts of rare species occurrences and huge numbers of birds species used in these areas. So lots of good stuff come through this program. And there's a new program that was just announced last week, so there's more to come on it. NRCS is not ready to take up any kind of sign up for this, but USDA and I think is it Health and Human Services in Washington worked together to come up with $700 million for a regenerative grazing practice. And it's likely to be part of EQIP and CSP, the programs that I've talked about earlier. And this is a good wildlife practice because what it does is it diversifies the pasture. Lots of species move into these pastures. They're not just pure fescue or pure brome or whatever was planted there. I was on a regenerative grazing farm in probably September or October, and just around the pickup, we found like 38 species of different forbs and grasses growing in that regenerative grazing pasture. And essentially, regenerative grazing is short duration grazing. We're talking, depending on the producer, they might do a couple hours a day on a paddock or maybe a day. And then there's a really long rest period that might go 60 to 90 days. And so there's plenty of time for grassland songbirds to nest in there and not be disturbed. There's really high numbers of birds that are being found in some of these. So that may be a practice that might interest you or neighbors or relatives. Something to consider. And I think, yeah, with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
That was
So we can ask you about bees. That way you don't have to add to your jar.
No? It's overflowing.
I have a really quick question. We do have a question in the Q&A as well.
Okay.
Um, my question is, so when you were saying that Missouri gets a little bit more than its fair share of Farm Bill dollars, partially because we have so much private land, is it also because we have like really substantially more private lands biologists acting as liaisons in Missouri than most states do? Is that part of it, or that just
Yeah,
allows us to properly put the dollars
yeah.
out there?
And I'm glad you brought that up because that is a fair point. We've been told many times that because of the private land biologists, wetland biologists we've got assigned to NRCS, we can do a lot more through the wetland reserve easement program. And at one point in time, Missouri was actually getting money that other states couldn't use and coming into our wetland reserve and actually allowing us to put more wetland acres on the ground. And it was because of that assistance. Through some of these other programs, we've seen the same kind of thing happen. Missouri's got, I don't know what the number is anymore. It's probably somewhere between 50 and 100 private land biologists and foresters, fisheries biologists here in Missouri that help with Farm Bill programs so they can do some of that planning workload and helping the landowner implement the practice. They can help with some of that workload. Plus, we've got biologists through Quail Forever. Cattlemen's Association has put on 4 grazing specialists that are helping with the native forages planting. So, and I'm going to leave some out. I hate to keep going. Ducks Unlimited has staff. Like I say, I'm going to leave somebody out. But there's lots and lots of staff out there through partners that NRCS is able to utilize, and like you mentioned, is able to do more because of that. That's a good point. Thank you.
Bill, Jack has a question, which is what are the chances that all or most of the conservation funds are stripped out of future bills? Are these programs farmer supported?
Um, yes, the farm groups support the programs, some more than others. Um, a lot of the movement in the last few years has been toward more working lands programs. Um, the money for like CSP and EQIP, and I think wetland reserve easements is fairly safe. Um, I can't remember in the big beautiful bill and in the government shutdown bill, they extended things several years. So some of that is fairly safe. Um, they're going to have to reauthorize CRP after this next calendar year. Well, by September 30th the next year, they're going to have to reauthorize CRP somehow. So that probably has the most danger of funds being stripped. We'll either need a new farm bill or a mini farm bill that's only about CRP and some of the other practices. But my understanding from the big beautiful bill is the EQIP and CSP was extended for multiple years, and the funding is there. Um, Part of that was the Inflation Reduction Act money, and that's just being rolled over into those programs. So yeah, there's always worry, especially as deficits get bigger and debt gets bigger. There's always worry.
Sophia has a question. If we have a family member or friend who may be interested in exploring some more conservation aware farming practices but doesn't have any knowledge about it, where would you recommend they start? What a great question. Thank you, Sophia.
Yeah, that is a good question. Well, fortunately, with all the technical assistance staff we've got in Missouri, we mentioned just earlier, there's lots of sources to help you get started. Um, and of course, you can do an internet search about every one of these programs in Missouri, have its own little website that gives you um, broad information, at least on those programs. But it's really be good for you to talk to some of these natural resource professionals, whether you want to start at the local USDA office or contact somebody from the Missouri Department of Conservation or some of the other um, uh, organizations I discussed, and just ask them what uh, is available out there. And a lot of these will do on-farm visits to give you an idea of what the possibilities are. And I think I'd start there.
I just put the web page at which folks can look up their local
Yeah.
contacts at the Department of Conservation anyway. So if you just put in your county, you can find they're private lands conservationists. Is that correct, Bill? That's
Right.
the correct
Right.
title, right?
Right. And each county has one assigned to it. They may cover more than one county, but each county would have a Heartland conservationist. Quail Forever on their website, and you'd look up Missouri pheasants and quail forever. That would get you to their website. They have a map that shows where their biologists cover. So you could do that. And I don't think Ducks Unlimited has anything up right now. It has all of their biologists. They just hired a few new ones. But that give you the majority of the technical assistance that's available out there.
Thanks, Jill. Jill just put the USDA Service Center information in the chat, and then I put the PFQF Missouri field staff information. And Jill made a comment so Jill is with Missouri Rural Crisis Center. She's their conservation coordinator. USDA announced today that January 15th is the first 2026 batching date, i.e. application deadline for EQIP CSP and the regenerative pilot program.
Ah, wow.
Cool. That's fast.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joe. Jess has a question. This is also an excellent question. If you could add anything to the Farm Bill, what would you add?
Wow. I would add more acres to CRP, especially, yeah, that's one of the things that's kind of holding this back now. Um, like I said earlier, I mean, any practice available out there for wildlife, water quality, soil conservation is in the Farm Bill. I mean, we've never had to go find another program to fund something because it wasn't offered through USDA. So probably the biggest deals would be they have a national limit on the number of acres that can be enrolled in CRP at any given time. And so increasing that limit and making sure, I don't think Missouri has the issue that some of the Western states do, but making sure that the CRP rental rates are at least competitive with the cash rental rates. Um, that kills interest when those two don't match up very well. And of course, not every ag producer wants to hear that either, because it does compete with the farm ground. But like I say, at one time in the 2000s, we had at least double what we've got now in CRP. So,
So, Bill, overall, would you say that there's like if you just said raising the cap on CRP acreage, so there is more demand than the program can take, basically.
there could be. I mean, we could promote it a lot more, but we're so near the cap now, we really can't go out and um, do big, broad promotions. Um, yeah, it's very near the cap. And they went to actually batching some of the continuous CRP signups. What was that, 2024? Yeah, it'd been in 2024 because they were so near the cap. Um, they were batching it to try and avoid going over the cap.
We have a couple more good questions in here. One person asked, I raise beef cattle in St. Genevieve County. At my local USDA office, I've spoken quite a bit with the NRCS and the county soil and water folks about various conservation programs. What is MDC's role in this with those kind of programs? How would a producer go about getting support from the MDC?
So the best thing to do would be contact your local private land conservationist, and Dana put that link up there to find out who that is. But most of them are versed in establishing native grasses, native forages, and can help you with seed sources, drills, plans along those lines. And if you want to make it more wildlife friendly, they can help recommend some of the native forbs that would be good to include in there. I don't know if that helps answer your question. That'd be where I'd start, is look up to see who your local private land conservationist is.
I'm gonna pop in the chat what I found for St. John County. And
Okay, good.
Looks like they're trying to roll somebody into that position there currently in St. Genevieve.
Is it vacant?
Yep.
Yeah.
if you go farther down the page, though, I was concerned by that as well. I see what you're seeing, but Luke Wemhoff is further down the page, and it says responsibility is private land conservation. So, and that he's assigned to, and that he's in St. Genevieve.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure why both things are showing up, but I've put that in the chat, Lara.
Awesome.
It'd be worth calling him.
Yep. Great. And Cheryl pops in. I want to transition about 60 acres of very old tall fescue pastures to native plantings in Cedar County. My experience with the conservation cover monarch pollinator program was that when we killed fescue with Roundup, Sericea lespedeza roared to life and outcompeted our pollinator plantings. Is it possible to permanently kill tall fescue and Sericea lespedeza, or should I expect to forever spray these nasty chemicals? My local USDA guy tells me that we have to use chemicals, which we are reluctant to do.
Which we are reluctant to
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Chemicals are about it, um, and the Department of Conservation did some studies, and they were able to knock 99% of it back after 3 years, treating it 3 years in a row. There's some herbicides that can be applied when the Sericea is blooming, so that'd be early September, I guess. Um, and it is not as hard on the native wildflowers, but Sericea is going to outcompete your wildflowers, most of your wildflowers. There will be some that can tough it out, but it'll get thick enough it'll outcompete. So I'm sorry, but about the only thing you got is herbicides or goats, I guess, but they'll eat your wildflowers too.
They can handle the tannins there.
Yeah.
Not all livestock can handle the tannins. All
Yep.
right. So Pam asks, uh, what do you need as far as advocacy from organizations like they're the Wild Ones chapters across the state? Like what can folks do? Dana might be able to answer that one too.
I just wanted to say that Pam, please come to every webinar and everything we ever do and ask that same question because we need that.
So when Congress takes up a farm bill or needs to take up a farm bill, call in your representative and your senators from Washington and encourage them, and not do it just once, but do it multiple times, encouraging them to um, help renew the farm bill, renew CRP. Those would be the big things coming up probably for the farm bill, I would imagine. Um, so, but keeping tabs on what the issues are is one way, and that's what Dana was referring to, is attending the webinar so you can hear what some of the issues are, and then contacting your people in Congress. And if they don't respond, I can keep after them. I've had to resort to phone calls on a couple of them. Most of them respond, but I've got one that won't respond to about anything. So I call and I leave a message with an aide.
Bill, one thing that occurred to me with that question is also, and I guess my question to add on to that to you is like, are these programs misunderstood by a significant amount of people, or do you feel like Missourians, have been working with the programs for so long? Because I remember hearing back in the day in Illinois, people saying things like, "Oh my gosh, the government is paying people to not grow food," and I'm just wondering if it's helpful for our audience to take information like what you've given tonight and be able to speak to others about it.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest deal is we are very poor at selling the benefits. And, I described some of them to you, the bird numbers and the pollinator resurgence, the bumblebee resurgence through some of these practices. It's a very well kept secret. Um, Very, very, very few people know about it. So being able to take some of this information and push it out, which is one of the things I'm hoping to do through the collaborative, um, brag more about what we've been seeing and let more people know. but that's key, I think. And then even letting, I think some of the aides, at least in our congressional offices in Washington, um, it spikes their interest, I think, when they hear some of this stuff. Not all of them, but some of them. And so any way we can get that information out would be good.
It sure is nice to see programs of this scale designed and delivering to benefit everybody. It's
Yeah,
not often the case. That's a pretty unique,
yeah,
good thing.
yeah. When you talk about water quality and you talk about saving soil for future generations and um, wildlife populations that everybody could enjoy, um, that's a lot of public benefit that you don't see through other things, especially on the scale that it's happening.
Well, it's good. It's a good example of the long-term thinking too. These days, it seems like everybody's in the short-term thinking, but that long-term benefits as well, long-term continued thing. It's
Yes.
just and you see it just kind of magnifies its im- its benefits over time.
Yeah.
Looks like yep. I guess Aunt Dana answered that question there. Yes, we are recording, so we'll be able to see this on the YouTubes. Uh, if you can tell me an aide who wants to hear about these subjects, I'll call that one as a waste my time calling the senator. Uh, there are particular staff and different offices that seem to be more receptive about it. I know that when we were talking to folks in DC, most of them wanted to get that farm bill along and move it, and it was more like they were dealing with certain members of leadership of certain committees,
Yeah.
whether it was Thune or somebody like that, and so it was kind of like the inertia was there. They hate kicking the can down the road as they describe it there, and they really want to just get it passed.
Yeah. I don't know of any of, and because I'm not familiar with all the representatives around the state, but I don't know if anybody in Missouri is on the House Ag Committee or if Schmidt or Holly are on the Senate Ag Committee. I don't think they are. But if we had somebody that was on the Ag Committee, that would be somebody to target for sure. Plead with.
One good thing about this topic, don't you think, is that it's pretty bipartisan.
Oh yeah,
I
yeah,
realize the details aren't always agreed to by both parties or various people, but you all, I do want to mention, and this is, I guess, a secret about to be revealed, but a number of us organizations, many of whom are on this call tonight, Missouri Rural Crisis Centers, CFM, MRBO, others, are going to be having a whole kind of grassland workshop and symposia in May, in Sedalia, and some field trips and things like that. So if this topic is of interest to you, things like these cost share programs are going to be talked about along with just all kinds of other things, grassland ecology, pollinators, things like that. So we haven't we don't have advertisements or announcements yet, but I'm going to put MRBO's calendar in the chat. And if you just kind of keep up with that, you can also on our homepage, you can sign up for our emails. This is not shameless self-promotion. It has a point, just to make sure you're kept in the loop about things like that event that we're going to be doing next spring. And Bill just put his email in the chat.
yeah. I'd offer if anybody's interested in who they need to contact or um, want to talk about particular programs, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Anybody else? Going once, going twice on questions. Well, Bill, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
Bill.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everybody.
Yep. Everybody have a great evening, and we'll see you next year.
See you next year.